Oh, it was the emergency alert. That's what it was.
I didn't actually prepare anything, but I do have something to say.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us to our first ever Pecha Kucha with the grad students of Toronto and Montreal. I guess I was pretty motivated to do this because I've just been hearing about how many grad students have been feeling really disconnected.
You need the mic.
Since the pandemic started. And so I just thought it would be a really nice opportunity to bring the different students from the different universities, people who are doing similar research or research that's adjacent to each other's, and just an opportunity for you guys to get to know each other and understand what their research is, and then hopefully maybe you guys can go for drinks afterwards and get to know each other and hopefully forge a bigger community. And then we also invited somebody from Concordia as well, so we've got a Montreal participant as well, so that's really fun. That's Maria. And so that'll be really fun so we can start connecting different cities as well. I'll pass it to Roberta.
Okay, so so this event is also part of the ArtSci Salon, the programming of the ArtSci Salon. ArtSci Salon is a program that facilitates encounters at the intersection of art, science, technology, environment, and social justice, you name it. And we are hosted graciously. We are the only artsy people and with kids at the Fields Institute. We bring a little bit of fresh air. And I also want to remind everybody that we are sitting on the sacred land on which University of Toronto is sitting, and we are on Turtle Island, and this was and is still the land of the Huron-Wendat, the Petun First Nations, the Seneca, the Mississauga, the Credit River, and the Haudenosaunee, and we should always thank for being here and sharing the land with Indigenous people, and also with everybody, with the international folks that populate Toronto, the University of Toronto, and Canada in general. So without further ado, I am introducing this Pecha Kucha. I'm very excited while I was assembling this big file that I hope doesn't crash. So the Pecha Kucha is, as you probably know, some of you might know, is a very rapid fire series of presentations where normally there's 20 slides in 6 minutes or something like that. But this time we have decided to give our artists, actually they're all emerging and already kind of semi and already established artists, the opportunity to have a little bit more. So they will have 8 minutes each, and the order of the artist is the following. So the way it works is we will be very strict with time. So I will call each artist. I will introduce them very briefly. They give me a very brief bio, and sometimes I make it even shorter. And then after the 8 minutes, we will go to the next one. And then at the end of all the presentations, we will have a massive Q&A, and there's a lot of stuff that, so people share a lot of ideas, and I see that there's a lot of items that really resonate with each and every presentation, and I would like to have a really nice dialogue, and then maybe there will be some collaborations after that, who knows. So, oh, I didn't say my name. My name is Roberta Buiani, but everybody knows me. Anyway, so, so I'm calling the first artist, Kavi. Yeah, come in here. And by the way, I'm using this one to tell. So, Kavi, should I say your real name? No. Okay. Kavi is a Latvian-Canadian artist and researcher specializing in creating exploratory systems for performance and immersive narratives. Her work involves using live biophysical data from the human body to develop innovative pathways to understanding and perception. Kavi is pursuing, almost done, with her PhD in computational arts at York University. Kavi, use your microphone.
Thank you.
And I should say
to you when you're at 7 minutes.
And I should say that Kavi has been doing some pretty awesome work here at Field. Just check her out. Yeah, you just have to
this
click.
one next. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
This one.
I can also use
Which is the next one?
you can do this, I think. I don't know how it works. Okay, so you just do this. Okay. I don't know how this works.
Okay. Good evening to you all. Thank you for having me. My name is Ilze Briede, but you can also call me Kavi. I am currently completing the final and most crucial stage of my doctoral program, which is working on my dissertation. And my research explores the intersections between art, technology, and cognitive science through the lens of complex, interactive, and real-time systems. My dissertation examines how integrating live brain data with cybernetic systems and active audience engagement can expand artistic practice and viewing data from unique and exploratory angles. By creating interactive, responsive environments, my research aims to dynamically probe and visually articulate emergent behaviors and insights into the creative and expressive potential real-time data interaction between human and non-human participants. Emergence is a phenomenon that describes how complex patterns and behaviors can arise spontaneously from relatively simple interactions within a system. In my dissertation, the concept of emergence is at the heart of my investigation, serving as both a theoretical framework as well as methodology. Specifically, I explore this through interactive installations that actively respond to real-time brain data signals and spatial data gathered by participants within the space. My installation foregrounds real-time responsiveness, enabling the artwork to dynamically evolve and adapt according to any kind of participatory interactions. This approach not only introduces a high degree of unpredictability, but also highlights the creative potentials within complex and dynamic systems. The result is a continuously evolving and living environment that offers new insights into artistic possibilities of life and emergent interactions. My approach is to use data as it is, in real time and minimally processed, while directly integrating into the art piece. Data visualization methods are vast. However, they often seek to find meaning through curation, filtering, or cherry-picking data sets to correspond to visualization methods or output incentives. I hope to preserve the inherent authenticity and complexity of the data source by allowing it to directly influence the process of handling it. Instead of looking for meaning, I enable a space for different and unique data feedback loops to guide and inform its ultimate outputs and expressions. Working with data for me means shaping and stretching our own understandings and perceptual modalities towards less human-centric and unknown paradigms. My research primary contribution to the field is to develop a robust and functional framework for exploring emergent phenomena using real-time data, which can subsequently be utilized and expanded upon by other researchers and artists. Besides working in a highly experimental fashion using live coding practice, live prototyping, live designing, my method also seeks to invite alternative players in shaping the dialogue about research methods and art making. My work involves exploring technological possibilities within Transmedia Lab 103, as you see in this picture. It is located at York University, and it is a space that supports immersive projections, programmable theatrical and stage lights, as well as surround sound and extended reality possibilities such as VR and AR. Currently, I am building small prototypes that link these unique worlds together into a unified and cohesive experience. And that means the lights, projections, sound, and augmented reality are all aware of each other and behave cohesively. In addition, participants, and by those I mean the brain, active spectator, and cybernetic system, together with the environment that they co-create, will continuously generate the new sets of raw data that will immediately be expressed back into the environment. Forming iterative feedback loop. This dynamic exchange will become the basis for higher order feedback mechanisms, instigating evolutionary changes in immediately accessible worlds, and also at the structural level of cybernetic systems algorithmic logic. I hope to create a system with help of raw data and computational algorithms as my teachers to observe and sustain emergent behaviors. The study investigates the emergence of new meanings through interaction, mutual perception, and coexistence within a continuously evolving, feedback-driven, and immersive environment. The process and outcomes are still unknown to me at this point. However, it is a driving factor to explore these possibilities within a complex and self-aware intelligent environment that I envision as my final and practical part of dissertation and the proof of the concept. I hope to deliver an interesting standpoint that marries brain science, cybernetics, data art, and active spectatorship into a rich artwork that will inspire and perhaps lead to some new and interesting discoveries for others, because it surely has already achieved that for me. Thank you for your attention.
So much. Oh.
Okay, so the next one is Kathy Zhou. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Almost.
Almost. How do you pronounce it?
Zhou. Yeah.
Zhou.
It's Chinese Zhou.
Yeah, like we should. So she is an artist, researcher, and PhD candidate at the University of Toronto. Her work bridges game design, critical pedagogy, and research creation to explore how youth can engage in public discourse through creative interdisciplinary learning environments. And we have 5 universities here, like York, UofT, TMU, OCADU, and Concordia. So we are in good shape.
Thank you.
You're the only one from UofT, but
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hopefully I don't disappoint. Yeah, I have like a 2 minutes video in this slide, so I'm gonna just, time myself and try to make it happen. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna go fast. I have 20 slides. So I do game-based research, and so game for learning, but not in the sense of learning mathematics or anything that's useful, but like learning 21st century competencies like collaboration, interdisciplinary, like a collaboration and design and so on. Before my researcher life, I graduated from OCAD drawing painting, so I work with my hands. So then I go to UofT for my master's, and I met my supervisor whose background is computer science and physics and nothing about art, but he likes to make
make stuff. Then that's why now I'm his PhD. And I spent 7 years, in that lab, which I'm like a lonely kid, resonate a lot with why this event is happening tonight. So I'm so grateful to be here to test my ideas out. So this is a work in progress. I'm still haven't really analyzed my data and write my findings yet. So, and also this is my first time to call myself, like a research creation like work. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And also, like I work, backwards, if arts education is the solution, so what is the problem? So I have to pick my own find, not many finds, but only one. So I will show you what I pick. And also, how do I, embedded these, like a real life problem in a game, which, we can learn about, critical theory and a critical pedagogy, then how to guide the student to connect back to real life, from this game. So I work in this like a serious game and a game for change framework under that, community. And those people are passionate about game that's not only for entertainment, but like also for societal change and also related to like our real life, like contemporary issues. So I realized, I'm not going to solve like a very specific issue, but instead, I'm more interested in like a systematic approaches, how can we address, like the incoherent, social conflicts using this game. So that's the one why I pick up like value pluralism. So like living in Toronto, which is like a multicultural society that we come from different backgrounds, sometimes it doesn't really translate. We all think we're doing the best, for our lives and for the society, but sometimes, the approaches are different and also we don't agree with each other. So my MA project started 2018. And, like with that MA thesis, that's like during the pandemic, and I finished in 2021. I didn't get to go to the classroom yet. So instead of going to the classroom and having real, student playing this game, I interviewed a bunch of, like technologists and also pedagogists and teachers, like designers and artists, who are interested in making this game together. So basically, I had a few findings. The most important thing that's in red color is like no leaderboards and rewards. I don't want to make this game, competitive. I want to make it collaborative instead. And I decided I'm going to make 5 lessons, like curriculum modules. And 3 of them are fixed, about the game context. And the last 2 are, teacher-led co-design projects. So that's my topic. So I'm focusing on, like these 3 sets of problems: utility versus value, freedom versus security, and a future versus present. And around these like 6 problems and 3 pairs, I come up with, like novel settings, give like made up name for them, and also made the concept art and, like materials that, will illustrate the problem. So inspired by Stephanie Springate, which is like my professor year before, and she now in McMaster. So this instant class kit, that inspired me to make, like a prepackaged, like a tabletop game, sets. And also incorporating my supervisor's work, it's called KCI, Knowledge Community and Inquiry. So which, the community co-construct like knowledge, like there's no central figures like the traditional teacher in the classroom. So how can we, facilitate that using this game? So the answer is always, like in design-based research, is always about co-designing with real teachers in the real classroom settings. So I started to work with this grade 11 visual art teacher who I interviewed like 7 years ago. And later 2 teachers, joined our journey. And now I'm working with Roberta's, colleagues, Jade Kim, on the undergraduate level, design using the same game. So, after a few iterations, we got like tabletop game cards and also, like digital instructions, including this, like AI character that we use like off-shelf technology. It's called Conv AI. Instead of having like ChatGPT, so the Conv AI allow you to ask, you know, the AI to play a character, which is like a playing characters like NPC that can tell you not the nonsense, but, you know, like actual context, you know, within the game. So then the students, you know, experiencing the game, you know, within small groups that can support up to 5 students per group. And, you know, for the whole class, we have 6 different locations, regions, like in the game. And also, you know, it's up to 30 students. First, they design the avatar, and also they kind of like go through this storytelling stage, and then they do group, you know, exchange and also debates and conversations. I have a video, but like I don't know if you play. So basically, video is, you know, based on a script. We collaborated with a writer, and also we use, you know, Gen AI to make the animations and so on. You know, luckily that we won the, it does play, okay.
On this land, conflicts and divisions have raged like an unending storm, burning since the dawn of memory.
Sorry.
Tragically, the representatives from different regions could not find common ground on many crucial matters. Without unified cooperation, human civilization stands on the brink. The next great disruption may be closer than we dare imagine.
Okay, sorry.
We can make it available.
Yeah, we can
later.
make all of these available.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so now it worked. Okay, maybe a little bit.
Perhaps tomorrow or even in the blink of an eye.
Oh, there, yeah.
Some may grow old in this fractured age. Others may enter hibernation.
You got 30 seconds.
Okay, so I'll go back to my presentation. uh,
20 seconds.
Yeah, we have technical difficulties. How's the time?
yeah.
Okay, so if I do, oh, go away. Oh, maybe this.
Okay, that works. Thank you so much. Yeah. So basically, you know, after a few rounds of gameplay that, you know, like this game is called Fall of Arctica. So it always fall until someone crack the game. So basically they are trying to make art, you know, as an artifact and to communicate, you know, the critical like lesson that they learned throughout, you know, the interactions. So around these like 6 topics, you know, like in different classes, teacher designed, you know, their own assignments for the students, you know, often involved in art. Okay, so just 30 seconds to wrap this up. Okay.
Doing needs 8 minutes per person.
Okay, so, okay, I'll just go to the end. So we'll have like art show. So on the left, you see that's the student creation. And also feel free to connect. Okay, thank you.
No, like there's also all sorts of technical problems. So the next one is Jessica. So Jessica Patel is a Master of Design candidate at OCADU University in the Digital Future program, who thrives on solving complex challenges. Her path began with a bachelor's degree in physics and astronomy. While researching ultra-faint dwarf galaxy, she realized a desire to conduct research that produces more tangible solutions for the complex problems that affect people every day. After earning a UX design certification, she pursued graduate studies and is working on a thesis project involving human-computer interactions, game studies, and machine learning. While continuing her research, Jessica is working with industry professionals to build upon her expertise. Thank you.
Say that just for cheaper was the design last month.
Thank you, Emma. This is my lovely thesis supervisor, Emma. Okay, I'll get started.
I'll let you know when you're done.
Thank you. Okay, so as you heard, I'm going to be presenting my master's thesis research today. So it is titled Combating Toxicity, Designing an Intelligent System to Diminish Verbal Harassment in Video Games. And so my project does exactly that. But before I go into it, I'll just give a little introduction to myself. So you heard some of that before, but I would call myself an interdisciplinary researcher, designer, and developer. And that's because I've dabbled in a lot of different things. As you can see, my journey started in an undergraduate degree in physics and astronomy at UofT. So I'm coming back here today. And then I'm wrapping up my master's degree in design, so specifically the Digital Futures program at OCADU University. And currently I just started working as a junior creative technologist where I'm working with electronics, modeling, programming, things like that. So I would say that I'm kind of in the middle of like STEM and design, but the overlap is I really like to solve complex problems. And so I want to first show you the incentive of delving into this project. So if you've ever played in video games or online multiplayer video games specifically, you might be familiar with the issue of verbal harassment or toxicity in video game communities. And so it's very obvious why this would be harmful to people. It's specifically very harmful to players because about 75% of players experience toxicity regularly. And it impacts their mental health, their gaming experience, their gaming performance. But on the other side, we also have game developers being impacted by this problem because about 20% of players spend less money on the games in which they experience toxicity. And so it also impacts their revenue. So here in the middle, we have this feedback loop where verbal toxicity leads to reduced gameplay and engagement in the game community from victims of verbal harassment. And thus, they have a reduced likelihood of working in game development, and we have a lack of representation and unaddressed issues, which just leads to verbal toxicity again. And so my research question for my thesis project was, how can design thinking, which is my methodology, and deep learning-based natural language processing techniques, so a form of machine learning, be used to create an intervention system that can be embedded directly into video games to do 3 action words that are underlined. So detection, moderation, and prevention of toxic verbal discourse or toxicity in online multiplayer games. So I created this intervention system that has these following components. It starts off by collecting player input speech, and then there's 2 branches of analysis. So there's text-based analysis and audio-based analysis. Then we have an output of a probability of how toxic that player is being, and that initiates some kind of interface elements that pop up during gameplay to intervene or to correct toxic behavior. And so just going back to my methodology again, I use design thinking, which has these 5 key stages. We have empathizing, defining, ideating, prototyping, and testing. So empathizing just involved trying to understand the wants, needs, and the unique experiences of video game players, because of course the video game community is very diverse. So we need to make sure this kind of system would be accommodating of that. Second part that I spent a lot of time doing is just defining toxicity. Toxicity is very complex given its subjective nature and the fact that it evolves over time. So I really had to make sure I defined it well. And then to create the actual intervention system, it involved a lot of ideating, prototyping, and testing. So to give some context, if you've ever played video games before, then you might be familiar with some existing systems because there have been attempts to solve this problem, but there are common pitfalls. So this includes that they usually just intervene after toxicity occurs. They don't really work well at preventing it altogether. They're usually not evaluated with players in commercial settings, and they don't analyze existing systems. So they usually just try to propose novel ideas instead of building upon what has worked and what has not worked. And there are also very problematic reporting systems because they can be vague. They might have a lack of feedback. Sometimes if a player goes to report someone else, it just goes like, thank you for your input. And then they get nothing else after that. So that's something that definitely needs to be worked on. So to create the intervention system, I first started by working on some machine learning algorithms. So the first one was a text toxicity analysis algorithm, and there's an example of what it does here. So if you say the words, "I hate you," it would transcribe that into the text, and then it would look for keywords or key combinations of words that are very likely to be toxic. So it can output a probability here. And then I also worked on an audio toxicity analysis algorithm where it takes your speech, but now it's looking at the waveform, because different kinds of waveforms can indicate what kind of emotion, what kind of tone you are using. Here, I was only really able to gauge emotion. So as an example, these are wave plots that show the same phrase being said with a happy emotion, angry emotion, and fear emotion. So you can see that there are clear differences, but also some similarities. So this algorithm had to be very nuanced. And I also developed a simplified first-person shooter environment to simulate how this intervention system would work. And you have these like interface pop-ups showing up, or that people can open to report a player, to like a player, things like that. So this was an earlier iteration. And it also has this yellow flag, red flag system in place to give players warnings or penalties and such. So I did a lot of player testing, and it was very fruitful. This is an example of a pane that shows up in the intervention system where players can report other players if they experience toxicity. But based on the feedback I got, I integrated more visual cues, more positive reinforcement, because that's something that's commonly missing from existing intervention systems. So being able to like other players, also having a rank that's associated with your friendliness, where if you're more friendly, you have more opportunities in game, you have more rewards and things like that. And so that's where I got to. And my key learnings from this project is that there's still a lot more work to do. I continue to work on this, but this problem is very complex, and there are many like edge cases to consider. And something else I was trying to do was gauging tone, because tone is really important when you're speaking to understand if it's toxic or not. But tone is very multifarious. There are many parts to it, and they're moving parts, they're interconnected. And emotion, the one thing I was studying, is just one part of it. And the front-end interfaces that I created to intervene during gameplay, they're the missing pieces, but I believe they're the game changers, because it helps to attack the problem at the core, and it's seamlessly integrated into the experience. And so finally, I would say my future work includes making toxicity algorithms more accurate, because of course, like, they will have their biases depending on the data that I use, refining the user interfaces that I made to accommodate more nuances or more players, implementing measures of context, which is an emerging idea in this area of research to help gauge how toxic someone is being, and detection for more languages, because I was only working with English. So that's everything, and it's my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what to do about it. Don't look.
Yeah, never reshare the screen, I think.
Oh, yeah, you know what, I can do something, maybe.
I think you just have to reselect the,
Okay, so the next speaker is David McFarlane, who is a visual artist, a musician, and a PhD candidate in the Media and Design Innovation Program at TMU. His practice is rooted in a rigorous exploration of acoustic ecology and the transformative potential of sonified biodata. His current research creation project reimagines the Great Lakes not as passive bodies of water, but as active characters, each possessing unique voices and stories. His work navigates in complex interplay between technology, ethics, and creative expressions, employing innovative methodologies to facilitate a collaborative process and positioning the Great Lakes as co-creators in the composition of immersive soundscapes. These sonic experiences invite listeners to transcend traditional anthropocentric perspectives, I think. Sorry. Yeah, Yeah, perspectives. And we consider the relationship with nature. I could have guessed it. Sorry.
Thank you. Starting? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was going to start with this a snapshot of my grade 12 report card, which indicated a 40% final mark for mathematics at the basic business level. The irony of speaking here today at the Fields Institute is not lost on me and my wife or my mother. I'm in my 4th year in the Media Design and Innovation program at TMU, and it's a program that invites researchers to explore research questions through their respective creative practices. My creative practices are visual art, music, and I'm back to school after a 25-year career as a creative director in the digital design community. My research began as an imaginary of sorts before I knew what an imaginary was. In 1997, I drew this sketch, which I called A Proposal for a Novel. I had imagined the Great Lakes as characters that were in relation with each other and with us. And I wondered what sort of stories they would have to say to us and to each other, knowing that they would eventually come together in confluence and go out to sea. The ideas have never left me, and for some reason I kept this wildly unfinished drawing. It's not hard to feel or imagine something like a mood emanating from a body of water. Attempts at personification are not new, personifying the natural world. The use of pathetic fallacy is commonplace in Western literature. But when I started my research at TMU, the Western tradition of representing and describing and being separate from began to fall short for me. My developing relationship with the lakes began to influence my approach. I stopped seeing them as objects and started seeing them more as living entities. I began to shift towards exploring collaboration between human and more than human actors and wondering if this could lead to creating more awareness and desire to people, for people, and to build more sustainable relationships with the natural world. I've shifted experimenting with ways to see if co-creating experiences with the lakes is possible through musical collaboration. This sensorial shift from visual to oral to musical helped welcome more ways for the body to lead the way, to connect physically with the land and the water. This is me at the very north end of Lake Huron, and I really like this picture because the figure ground in it really speaks to the figure ground relationship that I feel as a human in this more than human vast space. I became interested in acoustic ecology, which began as a form of acoustic activism on the part of like-minded faculty at Simon Fraser University in the late 60s and early 70s. Aileen Schaefer states that this kind of study can't be accomplished remaining in the laboratory, and you have to go out in the field. So I've been going out in the field quite a bit. Born out of acoustic ecology was a genre of composing called soundscape composition. Central to this practice is the concept of conscious listening and repeated listens. I believe soundscape composition is a viable way to be with rather than represent, and is something I'm using. For the past 3 years, I've been traveling with my wife and gathering field recordings around the Great Lakes using a stereo microphone, a hydrophone, and sometimes a contact mic attached to the canoe, which essentially turns it into an instrument. I've also been experimenting with biodata sonification with a device designed by Sam Cusimano, pictured here. The device reads micro changes in conductivity on the surface of organic matter, like your skin or a leaf, and I've managed to figure out a way to make it work with water as well. It translates those biosignals into MIDI data, which can be read by a myriad of instruments. The device also allows the plant or the water to play a 12-tone chromatic scale. You can assign a pentatonic scale or various minor scales. Data is a sea of noise, and humans have oceans of it. How can we make sense of it? How can we feel its significance? What about visualizing data? In the field, all the sound sources are captured simultaneously onto a multi-track recorder. And then later, back in the studio, I entered into the sound sources as a musician, and what some people might call a producer, in that I am kind of taking inspiration from the sound sources, letting them drive the emotional aspects of the music, but I'm very much acting like a producer. The process is not unlike jazz improvisation. And I'm interested in potentially publishing some of these pieces through Earth%, which is an organization that collects royalties for recordings that attribute to Earth as the artist. They work with climate scientists, researchers, and activists to ensure the grants generated from these royalties go to where they're most needed. Expanding on the multi-track studio work, I've very recently invited other musicians to jam essentially with me, improvising in real time with, in this case, a plant. This was last week at TMU, where a grapefruit plant my wife and I planted from a seed and been caring for is hooked up to the biodata sonification device, which is driving a synthesizer. And as you can see, we're playing electric and acoustic instruments. And the outcome of this experiment for me will include interviewing the human participants and trying to tease out what were instances of a collaboration was sensed on my part. Where they feel whether they feel co-creation was happening or not. Out in the field, we also we're capturing as sort of like a diaristic reflection strategy to make notations. I would paint these watercolor pieces that would happen very quickly and, like I said, very diaristically. And I would use those back in the studio to look for emotional cues. Lastly, this piece by Rebecca Belmar, for me, is really a powerful benchmark for me, how a work can invite embodied experiences. The piece requires the participant or viewer to get down on the land, beyond the land. Am I done? 10 seconds, okay. Anyways, the quote here really resonates with me, where she asks if this is okay. It's something I'm asking myself all the time. How do I recognize consent in the participants? And how can I bring the rights and the plants respectfully into the studio? Thanks very much. You can listen to some examples there about URL if you want.
I need to restart PowerPoint because this is going to be recorded and we don't want that. Oh, there you go. Okay, save. No, we don't need to. We'll just go. Okay. Okay, fixed. Okay, Maria. Maria comes from Montreal, but I understand that she knows Ontario very well. Okay, Maria Simmons is a Canadian sculpture and installation artist whose work embraces contamination as an act of collaboration. She collects garbage, boils butter, ferments plants, and nurtures fruit flies. I had an okay, anyway, I'll tell you about the fruit flies later. She makes art that eats itself. Simmons holds an MFA from the University of Waterloo and a BFA from McMaster, and is a PhD candidate at Concordia University. Recent exhibitions include the Visual Arts Center of Clarington, Lidgalleriet in Norway. I don't know how to pronounce this. Tromsø Center for Contemporary Art, Filminco Foundation, and Contemporary Art Museum of Estonia. Simmons' work has been featured on CBC Arts Peripheral Review, and Public Parking.
Okay, there we go. All right. So yes, my name is Maria Simmons, and I am in the first year of my PhD program at Concordia University. So before I get into my work, I'm going to give a brief introduction to bogs and peatlands, which is what I'll be presenting on today. So bogs are a type of peat accumulating wetland fed only by rainwater and dominated by sphagnum mosses. So this creates a very specific kind of acidic, low oxygen, and nutrient poor condition, which is important to the context of the work. So I grew up walking to a swamp almost daily, but I didn't actually start using them in my artistic practice until 2022, when I spent a month at the Mustarinda residency in the 10,000-year-old Finnish forest. There I encountered what's called a blanket bog for the first time. As the month progressed, the daylight extended by half an hour each day, and the bog slowly revealed itself. I spent this time making lichen lines from fallen lichen around the perimeter. I took casts of holes in the earth where the bog had unearthed tree roots that lifted up different rocks. I ventured out at night to photograph the bog using ultraviolet light, a gesture of purification and contamination at once. This residency also sparked a long-term collaboration with Ingrid Bjornelli and Austrian sound artist Fabian Landsmeyer. Together, we've been creating a series of video works exploring peatlands across Finland, Norway, Estonia, and Canada. Our videos use photogrammetry and field recordings to encounter the bog's complex terrain. We're interested in how these technologies, often associated with surveillance, might be used non-extractively to listen and witness rather than to capture. In 2023, I exhibited a multi-floor installation at the Visual Arts Center of Clarington. This explored the bog as a metaphor for memory, submerged, layered, resistant to time, yet deeply alive. Each floor of the gallery was mapped to a layer of the peat bog, the atmospheric, the acrotome, and the catatome. On the bottom floor, the catatome, I installed active fermentations. These were housed in glass vessels connected in pairs by long PVC tubes. The gases and microbes traveled between them, creating new microbial relationships in the liminal areas. The contents reflected a tension between care and contamination. Some of these ingredients were foraged from near peatlands, while others used soda fountain syrup from McDonald's. Suspended inside the vessels were vacuum-sealed fragments from my own life, childhood stones, Girl Scout badges, and a diamond engagement ring. Each became a site of personal archaeology, a brine of memory. In the acrotemic layer, a video exploring peatland mythology, along with an audio work, filled the space, a soundscape built from the isolated high and low frequencies of a baby's cry. They were unrecognizable, but still biologically unsettling, a primal alarm that bypassed language. In the atmospheric layer, a large bog eye installation invited viewers to get low to the ground and encounter the scent of the bog through custom-blown glass vessels filled with miniature peat bogs, scent, and compost. In my current research, I'm approaching peatlands through the intertwined lenses of resistance, ritual, and ruin. Their resistance is both material and symbolic. They're not quite land, not quite water. They resist classification, legibility, and productivity. They're non-binary ecologies that resonate with queer and trans embodiments, not either or, but both and. Peatlands resist capitalist time. They're slow, they're saturated, they preserve. That slowness is a refusal of speed, of extraction, of flow, of a demand that land be useful to be valuable. Historically, peatlands have been associated with the feminine, with the moist, and the uncontainable. In Norwegian, the word for bog is etymologically related to the word for cunt. This discomfort mirrors attitudes towards the figure of the historical witch, which embodies another type of feminized symbol of power, transgression, and resistance. In my research, I'm interested in drawing out these parallels and exploring how both peatlands and witches disrupt the dominant frameworks of control, power, and legibility. Ritual serves as the entry point to my engagement with bog butter, a substance that embodies the intersection of ritual, ecology, and temporality. Bog butter is essentially a lump of fat, usually dairy, buried in a peat bog. Over 500 examples have been found in Ireland alone, some of them dating back over 3,000 years. The reasons for people burying them isn't definitively known, but many believe that they serve both preservative and ritual functions, offerings to the land, or perhaps to deities, and part of seasonal rhythms. Peatlands are not just ecological zones, but mythological ones. Across Celtic and Norse traditions, they appear as entrances to the underworld, places of trial, and sites of hidden power. So bog butter in this context becomes more than food or object. It becomes a portal, a gesture of exchange between the human and more than human world. While peatlands are powerful sites of resistance and ritual, they're also increasingly sites of ruin. Throughout recent historical history, peatlands have been described as being bad lands, commonly drained, especially during the rise of authoritarian regimes. For example, Italy's draining of the swamps under Mussolini, or Estonia's mass swamp drainage while under Soviet control. These historical patterns resonate with contemporary political rhetoric, such as Donald Trump's current call to drain the swamp, which echoes the impulse to sanitize, control, and eliminate perceived disorder, both environmentally and ideologically. This drive to dominate, ideologically. Yeah, so this drive is not only politically symbolic, it also has ecological consequences. Peatlands store more carbon than all the world's forests combined. But when we mine, drain, and extract them, they release this stored carbon. What was a sink now becomes a bomb. When we destroy peatlands, we also destroy the very environments that once held for us ancient tools, bodies, records of care. So the ruin is double, a loss of futures and a loss of the past. In 2022, I buried my first bog butter in a peat bog near Mattawa, Ontario. Since then, this gesture has become an annual ritual. I returned every year to both unearth and to bury butter. This act began as research, but over time has become something more intimate and layered. It is a ritual of offering, a marking of time, and participating in an exchange with the land. Recently, I've been expanding on this work, creating custom semi-permeable ceramic vessels inspired by bog ecology and mythology, using 3D scans of the bog's microtopography. To explore the parallels between the bog and the witch, I've been collecting footage from video game swamps, an avenue through which many people first encounter peatlands. This summer, I'll be furthering my material investigations by creating custom clay bodies, experimenting with vessels, continuing my 3D scanning, and making more videos. Okay. Thank you.
Hey. Where's Shelby? She's next. Okay. So Shelby Murchie is a Toronto-based new media creative and technologist interested in exploring how physically responsive systems can enhance and mediate perception, experience, and cognition. She holds a bachelor in new media from TMU and is currently pursuing a master's in digital media at York University. Her research spans unconventional interfaces, biologically inspired design, and data physicalization. By drawing on these subjects, Shelby aims to facilitate more intuitive relationships between humans and technology, making complex information accessible and meaningful through embodied interaction.
Yes, hi everyone. So just to reintroduce myself again, I'm Shelby, new media artist and new media creative and technologist with background in interactive systems and digital design. To reiterate, I hold my bachelor's degree in new media from Toronto Metropolitan, and I'm now in my second year of my master's at York. I've always been drawn to projects that live at the edge of disciplines, so where code meets art and where systems respond to more than just input. I like working with technologies that feel dynamic and alive, whether that means building installations that respond to motion, experimenting with generative visuals, or exploring how machines perceive space and behavior. And what drives me most in my research is curiosity. So I have a strong desire to understand how we can create interactions that are intuitive, physical, and exploratory. And that curiosity has led me into user experience design, robotics, fabrication, computer vision, projection mapping, data-driven storytelling. So my research is kind of all over the place, but all as ways of exploring what it means to kind of think through and live with technology. So like I said, my work spans a few different domains. I've spent a lot of time working with particle systems and generative programming, partly because they're so versatile. They can be used to simulate a wide range of physics and natural phenomena, and then that can be adapted in all kinds of interactive and generative contexts. And I think they're quite beautiful and captivating as well. And in parallel, I've worked extensively with microcontrollers like Arduino and Raspberry Pi, physical sensors, and over the past year, I've even had the opportunity to develop skills in computer vision and robotics. So I've specifically been working with robotic arms like the Canova Gen 3 and the UFactory Lite 6, which is pictured just at the bottom there in a gallery installation. And that was part of a project that I worked on as a research assistant for Zhou, who is a digital media professor at York. We were attempting to develop a system of biofeedback that used the light emitted by bioluminescent dinoflagellates. Unfortunately, they aren't very cooperative and they did not like the weather, the light that we were giving them at the time. So we had to pivot and we ended up connecting the end effector to a camera and monitor setup. And it ended up becoming this kind of apparatus that moved through the space and scanned its surroundings and broadcasted what it saw. And then to the right of that is a photo of a project I worked on with two other peers. It's called Image Forming Apparatus. We decided to recreate a dead patent for a very vague so-called image forming apparatus, which you can find a whole bunch of dead patents. They're available by the thousands on specialized websites. And so we resurrected it through sculptural installation. And the goal here was to transform obsolete media into a physical artifact and thus a visual metaphor for the lost potential of forgotten technologies. For this piece, we also used Touch Designer to project a distorted global e-waste map onto and through the structure. And we transformed it into sort of a makeshift canvas. And I think that added a layer of dynamic and visual interest as well. So all of this work has helped me to think more deeply about embodiment, perception, and how machines respond to the world in intuitive ways. And these are all things that are currently directly informing the direction that I'm taking with my research. So at the core of my work is a belief that technology can reshape how we perceive. So I'm not just interested in designing tools that display information. I also want to create systems that change how it's experienced. So for me, data is a material similar to clay or sound. It can be stretched and shaped and responded to. And so I aim to build experiences that are more than just interfaces, rather ones that invite curiosity or reflection instead of just productivity. I also value exploration over optimization. So I'm less interested in solving problems in the traditional sense and more interested in creating environments that open up new ways of thinking, feeling, and being with information. So my research currently is grounded in a few key areas, but at the heart of it is an interest in how creative computation and visualization or physicalization can bridge artistic expression and technical understanding. So I'm especially drawn to ecological data, things like forest patterns, climate systems, environmental degradation, because it's complex, it's time-based, and often it's imperceptible. And I'm interested in how we might design systems that give form to that data in ways that go beyond explanation. So systems that invite exploration and provoke emotional response, support understanding through sensory experience. So drawing on research outside of my own, I see data visualization as a relational, iterative, perceptual process, which I think is especially important in non-academic or scientific contexts. And I also take inspiration from biology and natural systems, not just visually, but in how they adapt and organize and respond. So these qualities guide how I think about designing responsive systems and that feel intuitive and alive. I'm also exploring extended and mixed reality as ways to embed data into spatial environments, so spaces that respond to real-time data streams and the people inside them. But ultimately, my work asks how we can use visualization, computation, and interaction to foster more resonant and perceptual relationships with information. So looking forward, I think it's somewhat obvious that my research is still taking shape, and that's something I'm learning to kind of lean into. The major research project that I will be working on over the remainder of my master's is still in its early stages, but it's leaning towards a thesis that explores how environmental or ecological data can be experienced through perceptual and spatial systems. And that might take the form of an interactive installation or an extended reality experience, but it will be something that is responsive and situates the user in a shifting data-driven environment. I'll also be working across sensor integration, machine vision, and generative visuals, as well as interaction design, and experimenting with form until I find the system that best answers the questions that I'm asking. I think I'm done a little early, but.
Thank you. Aileen. So, Aileen Dong, pronounced correctly. Yeah. She is a graduate student from the Digital Futures program at OCADU University, and she's also an interdisciplinary installation artist exploring the intersections of mixed reality, AI, and narrative-driven experiences. Her work investigates the fusion of physical and digital worlds, crafting immersive environments that explore evolving relationship between human embodiment, cybernetics, and intelligent systems. Through a hybrid approach that combines AI-generated aesthetics, spatial computing, and speculative storytelling, she creates interactive installations that challenge perceptions of identity, agency, and presence in synthetic realities. I assume that you will present on your thesis project, which is called Lumia. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aileen, and I'm here to present my thesis project, which is called Lumia, empowering the personal narrative through AI-generated environments and tactile interactions in mixed reality. Where did this idea came from? So first is I was having a background in storytelling and fine arts, so I find that traditional storytelling often has a linear and passive mode, and the current mixed reality, for someone who doesn't really know about mixed reality, it's kind of like a augment AR, but combines more with the real environments, so it's mixed reality. So current mixed reality experience lack of adaptive narratives and tactile feedback. Mixed reality and AI can offers opportunities for participatory and immersive narratives. And for my personal motivation is bridging the emotional present between the digital and physical worlds. So I'm just gonna quick introduce my research questions. How AI-generated mixed reality environments incorporate with real-time narrative and tangible feedback from everyday objects, potentially to overcome the limitations of passive consume of traditional storytelling by offering deeper and more personalized experience and bridging the gap between passive audience engagement and active narrative co-creations. I believe like most of people around here might play some video games before, and video games is considered as a type of method to tell a story. And my game is based on AI native games. So I developed a structure, a framework for the like mixed reality AI storytelling systems. And also I explored how real world objects, for example, the tables and chairs around you, every real objects in the room can be part of the narrative experience and is adaptive. So you bring this device to any space and it can come true again. And also I focus on the interaction design. And also do a little bit speech and spatial interactions. As you guys see here, the first picture up there is like, it's kind of like how it will look like in the end, which is you are sitting in the room and the window and the ceiling will be the transparent mode. So you can see the VR environments outside and you can tell the stories and creating your own story, and real environments around you that adaptively change through your speech. So, and the location will be based on the real object. So you can actually touch the table to feel that you're touching the dragons in your story. It potentially has a D&D or kind of like a role play game potential. Yeah. So here's the background. That's one, as you can see here, is AI native games. That's a framework that I learned a lot from, which is the AI design can give in the affordance to the game design, and the game design can give in context to the AI design, and which in that way it will leading to more organic engagement storytelling, because the story right now is not pre-planning by the author, it's co-creation through the users. And I do a lot of prototyping and also some sketches for the storytelling. And this is just, yeah. And I'm just going to do a really quick prototype walkthrough. And prototype one, I mainly do the AI and the mixed reality foundations for the future's work. As you can see, you can say something and voice recognition in the space, and you can also change the setting to the sky through your speech order. And prototype two, I incorporate AI interactive narratives, which I collect the AI generated 3D model into the UofT space, and also do character interactions. And prototype three, I add in the tangible feedback, which is, as you can see, there's a stand here. And once I say, turn this stand into a princess with the wings, and then it just turns into and perfectly fitting on the real object. So when I'm touching the stand, I'm actually touching the princess. It's not very accurate right now, but somehow you're giving some tangible feedbacks. Yeah, and prototype four, as you can see, I added more background stories and also designs into it, and it's a full integrations. It has a narrative flow, which is a preset background of the story. So introduce the players to interact with the elements in the space, and then begin the experience of tell your own stories, and then change the objects in the room to the characters of your own story, which is the main game mechanism. And so adding music, animations, and environmental storytelling that complete the AI-driven mixed reality experience. Here are some screenshots of the in-games. As you can see, this is an AI character that just keep telling you feedbacks on what you're describing. For example, if you turn this camera into a cat, and then the AI character gonna answer your questions and comments on your choice. And also people using really creative minds, like they change chairs into Nicolas Cage and like some really crazy ideas I never thought they gonna say. And the AI is like, yeah, and they can make it come true. So here's a very short video and some footage. I don't know.
40 seconds left.
All right, yeah. I think I'm stuck at this page. It's not moving right now. Yeah.
Because I think you're in the browser.
Oh,
Yeah, this is the browser.
yeah.
So I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah. Let's see. So you're back here.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is just a plan for the thing. As you can see, the real environment is white part, and visual and trend and pastoral modes elements are like those bluish things, and which is really fun. You can see your room change to a different role, but it stays the same roles, and yeah, and it's really fun. And evaluation, I'm just gonna pass it. Yeah, yeah. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It is.
So I can make that bar just.
Time is really like a bitch. It's very. Okay, Marko.
I'm also introducing myself, so don't.
Okay.
You can do like a light. Yeah.
Okay, so media artist and researcher from you're at York, right?
York.
Yeah, from York. Okay, introduce yourself.
Okay. Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming. I will be talking a little bit about my MRP project today, but first I will introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Marko Cindric. I am currently just finishing up my first year, going into my second year of my master's in digital media at York. I've also recently finished the Bachelor of Fine Arts in New Media from TMU. So I'm a new media artist, and I'm interested in the overlooked presuppositions and ideological residues that inadvertently shape discussions on the climate crisis. And by that, what I mean is I'm looking at the vestiges of modernity that we still stick with. So things like anthropocentrism and the idea of, the myth of progress, that every generation will advance the next, and that technology is sort of a representation of that advancement. And it's very linear and very kind of straightforward. My work integrates themes of degrowth, decentralization, ancestral lifeways. Only recently have I realized that being born from Croatian immigrants who lived in like a farming village pre-electricity, even though they were born in the 1950s, I'm realizing how much that plays a role in my work, even though I was very much hyper-digitalized at an early age. And I'm also oriented towards disrupting the age-old tendencies of science and technology towards control, decontextualization, and forceful quantification of a living, interconnected world. So very much systems theory and ecology are really kind of at the core of my practice. I included this quote as well from one of my favorite philosophers, Bayo Komolafe, which is, what if the way we respond to crisis is part of the crisis? So that's kind of a position that I'm working from. In my practice, I'm really heavily inspired by eco and systems art of the past. So Robert Smithson's Spiral Jetty is a great example. Very obviously, it's still an intervention in the landscape. But you can imagine even just walking around it and how it kind of guides your perspective as you're walking along it. It is very much situated in the context of the landscape, and it's sort of about the land. It uses the materials of the land and kind of points back at it at all times. Hans Hacke's Condensation Cube, another excellent work. It's a cube in a gallery with a bit of water in it, and it's just allowed to let its natural processes run. And I think the thing that I really like about this piece is that as much as, again, it is an intervention, there's less of an element of control in terms of what's actually happening here. It's more so just kind of giving the natural systems their room to speak, and it's giving context. It's more like a facilitation rather than a direct sort of forcefulness. I also really enjoy kind of political takes in land art. So Agnes Dennis's Wheat Field, A Confrontation from 1982, where she planted a field of wheat on 2.2 acres of landfill that were created when the World Trade Center was constructed. Developers at the time were valuing this land at something like $4.5 billion. So this piece was really, really directly kind of confronting our priorities as a society and kind of what the intended use by these developers of this land would be versus what could be done that would be a little more perhaps communally beneficial. So this is a work of digital eco-art that also really, really inspired me and kind of bridges the gap between more land-based practices and the digital. Aileen, What is Missing is a browser-based project. Aileen is best known for being a monument designer. So she actually designed the Vietnam War Memorial in Washington, D.C. She refers to this work as her last monument, and it is a monument to lost biodiversity. So it's sort of an interactive map-based globe. It compiles crowdsourced data, stories from people who, remember hearing a certain bird or seeing a certain animal around when they were kids that is no longer present, as well as certain sort of climate initiatives happening in different regions. So one thing I really enjoy about this piece is I find that the digital here, I kind of refer to it as like a digital Trojan horse, where the aesthetic packaging is so kind of pleasing to someone who is really, really raised with the digital, but the subject matter is much kind of heavier, a little more emotional, and I really, really appreciate that it kind of uses this packaging to kind of maybe use that channel a little more, and that is already a little more open than some others. In my own work, this is a project that I made in 2023 that is kind of synthesizing a few ideas. So this project is called Known Place. I went to a site in the Don Valley. I took a 3D LiDAR scan of a felled tree area, collected botanical samples, mud, some snow that ended up melting, and I did field recorded audio. And what I did was I kind of clinically brought these to a gallery and positioned them, basically asking the question of, it essentially was a method-based critique of scientific reductionism. So the way that we've done science for centuries now is you take things, break them down to their smallest component, and then that's how you gain true understanding. With this piece, I was questioning what happens when you take these relationships and you sever them from one another. Can you really truly say that you know that place when you've so radically reconfigured the kind of web of relations that comprises it? So all of these pieces are kind of going together into what my MRP project is going to be. I'm calling it Save As. The themes that I'm working with are conservation, digitization, and loss, as well as lossiness in terms of the digitization process. So like my Aileen's project, it's going to be browser-based. I'm going to be using Three.js. And essentially the plan is that I'll be creating a navigable map as the central hub. And from that map, you'll be able to click into 3D experiences comprised of LiDAR scans, ambisonic field recordings, and these will be taken at-risk wild sites and edgelands in the GTA and the surrounding region. So basically sites of nature that are at risk of development and destruction in the near future. And then surrounding those, I kind of want it to be just like a small cubic slice surrounded by a very stylized digital void. And the purpose of this is that I really want to emphasize that loss of continuity and kind of that longing for the context to be able to go to that place in its context. And the research intentions of this are essentially fourfold. So I want to elaborate how the supremacy of datification is at its core a bid for control akin to colonization. And by that, I mean, we have computers, we want to turn every problem into a computer. If you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, same concept. I want to offer a method-based critique of techno-solutionism as it pertains to the already problematic notion of conservation. Conservation is a word that environmentalists are already kind of problematizing on their own, because how do you conserve something that is always changing? For example, I feel like if nature is not fixed, our approaches to nature should also not be fixed. This should be a little more relational and dynamic. I also want to expand digital art's capacity to be lucidly self-critical and act as a tool of resistance against ecocidal technocratic systems. I think we all know that The history of computers is very much rooted in the military-industrial complex. I would argue that many of our new technologies still are. So this is also an attempt to kind of acknowledge that while still working within that space. And last but not least, I want to present a compelling argument that the virtual is and always will be an insufficient substitution for the real. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you want to introduce yourself? No.
I don't remember who I told you I was.
Okay, I'm gonna read some. Okay, G. Blekkenhorst. He is a Canadian artist and experimental narrative designer working across multiple media, including games. I don't know what this is, but TTR GPS?
Tabletop RPG.
Oh, tabletop. Okay, tabletop RPGs and comics. They have previously worked with Pushing Vertices, Shining Spark Entertainment, Peculiar Path, and Crack Lab, in addition to their experimental games practice. They are a member of the Friendship Edition Comics Collective and published in various comics anthologies, including Wayward Sisters and Wayward Kindred, with Theo Comics and Pulping. Thanks.
My name is Gillian Blekkenhorst, and I am just finishing my first year of my MFA program in digital features at OCADU University. So I'm going into my second year, and I'm starting my thesis project, which I'll tell you about today. In addition to being a freelance narrative designer working in indie game studios, I teach introductory game design courses at York University. And my BDes was in illustration. So a lot of my processing comes through making. I understand things through making them, and I process my ideas through drawing and diagramming. And we're going to see a lot of those terrible diagrams today. I'm an interdisciplinary experimental narrative artist, and I've had a pretty storied career before I came into video games. I've worked in post-production and animation, production design and film, web design, and I still work with comics and illustration a lot. Each of these disciplines speaks to me a lot, and I enjoy working in video games because I can combine a lot of those different disciplines together all in one project. OCADU has given me the opportunity to branch out. I've been working with interactive sculpture, installation, and performance. Here are some of my robots who are bad at having feelings, and returning to my love of physical fabrication. I also write hopelessly earnest poetry and hopelessly sardonic jokes. I like a good turn of phrase, and I have attempted to write more traditional short stories, but I can't seem to help making them complicated and weird. Through the lens of horror and speculative fiction, my work discusses themes of shame, vulnerability, reluctant capitalism, cognitive dissonance, and the fear that your body and your senses are not on your side. I believe that fiction connects human beings, allowing both artists and audiences to be vulnerable with each other in a way that can otherwise be difficult to access. It creates a space for us to spend time luxuriating in more internal things, safe from the pressure to be responsible little owners. I love to play with innovative narrative mechanics, to play with form and format. I write books that readers need to solve to understand, and I love digital and tabletop games. This format lets you make audiences be culpable for the consequences of their decisions in real time. A game world is a place that I can craft and expect somebody to crawl inside of and fully commit to while they're there. My work often deals with portals and haunted houses and breaking the fourth wall. I return again and again to the phenomena of one reality bleeding into another, whether it's the fantastic seeping into the mundane or a fictional game world breaking containment out of the magic circle into the real world. So for a moment, I'm going to talk about interface simulation games. So what I'm calling interface simulation games are examples like this. The example on the left here is Her Story. The example on the right is Home Safety Hotline. So these are games where you use a software that presents a fragmented, nonlinear narrative, which players explore and then they reassemble what's going on in their own imaginations. While there's sometimes prompts to follow, these games are largely intrinsically motivated by the player's own curiosity. The sense of mastery is created based on that player's realization rather than stats that are tracked on a HUD. My thesis research involves studying and developing an interface simulation game. The affordance of this is creating a space for players to occupy what I'm calling an empty protagonist. So rather than constructing an avatar that represents a person in their game world, or stepping into the life of an existing character who has a history in that game world, players play as they are. So they enter the fiction as themselves in their own bodies and bringing their own histories into the game. The software becomes a portal. The software is implied to exist in the same world as the player, but it gives evidence that that world is stranger and more dangerous than it was thought to be. My literature review is looking into game studies, focusing on interaction mechanics, agency, and player embodiment. I'm also looking into fiction studies, especially possible world theory and the narratological concept of metalepsis. So metalepsis means when readers experience changing between different narrative layers. So as an example, within a fiction, if one character tells another character a story, that story is its own narrative level. But these levels can also exist outside of the fiction. So in hyperreality and augmented reality, the fictional world is layered on top of the actual world. It's presented as real, but the edges between the two become fuzzy. The artwork that it's inspired by this and that I'm expressing these concepts through is called Ontological Bleed. The player takes a job as a research intern, tasked with migrating an archive database to new software. They're cross-referencing mysterious physical artifacts and the metadata to uncover a supernatural mystery. They'll interface with mysterious entities from reality that is encroaching on our own, much like how fictional game worlds intersect with ours with the player as a pivot point. So here are some of the fuzzy layers that I'm playing with. There's the real world, where we are right now and where the player is. The current state of the fictional archive, so the database software and the filing system of the physical artifacts. This gives the players a glimpse into different fictional time periods where researchers have made discoveries, left notes, got themselves into massive trouble, and accidentally create portals into, and this is a spoiler, an alien realm whose occupants crawl through the portals to occupy the database, attempting to enter the real world by manipulating the player, masquerading as researchers who accidentally summon them. So as players establish a fictionalized identity and reputation in the game world, they're given increasing agency, interactivity, and responsibility. This allows them to find more world building, to build relationships with the characters, as those characters reveal themselves to not just be memories. They're entities that communicate with the player directly. Players will then have this agency and their fictionalized identity hijacked by an entity who uses the access they've earned and the identity they've formed to manipulate the game world. And by implication, the actual world, because we're saying this is real, without players' input and consent, while the players are powerless to stop it. This is using narrative dissonance deliberately as an instrument of horror. This archive has been neglected, forcibly relocated multiple times, and poorly migrated from obsolete software. This erosion leaves mysterious gaps and implies the archive was once much more detailed than it currently is, which conveniently disguises how much I can practically expect to produce during a year-long project. The presentation of the thesis includes an immersive installation of the archive room at the end of term exhibition, featuring the physical artifacts that I'm prototyping, and a limited demo of the game that'll be easier to absorb in a public place. But then it'll also have a new employee onboarding manual, which people are encouraged to mark up and take home, and includes a link for them to work from home as an intern and complete the rest of the game experience. I designed the project to give myself space to experiment and play with the fiction and form, following paths as they emerge through the practice. This summer, I'm prioritizing prototyping the database, and I'm taking advantage of the resources that OCADU fabricate or augment the haunted objects and media. It's also yard sale season, so I'm going to see what narrative potential I can find out in the wild. Oh, I'm also visiting archives around Toronto so that I can speak to archivists and researchers about how they use real data, how those systems are connected, and what marks might be left by the people who've used that information. I'm going to document my own understanding of the theory and narrative mechanics in diagrams and illustrations throughout the paper, and talk about my emotional experience of this reflective practice. The structure of the thesis paper will itself be presented in terms of ontological worlds that can be traversed by the paper's audience. And we're done.
So wow, that was really great. Thank you guys. You did a really great job. That was 8 minutes is hard. It's really hard, but you all did really well.
Oh, I'm done talking.
Okay, so just give me a moment. I am going to stop sharing so that we have that and not that, because this thing is good. So the whole thing has been recorded, hopefully. And I'm planning to upload that on the ArtSci Salon YouTube channel, where I usually archive all the presentations and all the performances that we do. And this has become really quite a big archive. Talking about archives, because I've been doing this for like 10 years. Almost 10 years, 9 years. Anyway, so we're gonna open the floor to questions and comments. There's a lot of stuff all of your presentations have a lot of things in common. And I can see how different presentations resonate with each other. So I don't want to talk myself. So I want the audience to talk. I just ask that people talking to the mic when they say something, so that this is going to be recorded. And if you don't want your voice to be your face to be seen, like you see that is the room, so you don't see much. So okay, so anybody wants to try and start? But you want, sorry.
Oh, it's just something that's not mine.
Oh.
Or even the slide after this.
Okay, so I can do one thing, because this is what is on. I'm just going to
you talk. You ask questions.
Okay.
So, this is my question before I had, come here. So I want to ask, for all these people who know about research creation and did research creation, because, it's very loosely defined in textbooks and, seminars. And I really want to know what's your data analysis, a method, or what do you consider is a completion of the research, the final form, or what's your findings and stuff? Yeah.
Anybody wants to
Hi, Casey. I do agree that it's kind of loosey sometimes, but my suggestion, my experience, is just to find some criteria that are existing in the industry and in the academic, and then just combine them and tailor them together. And honestly, sometimes just gather some user data, and what you think is fine, that is the end. And that's my experience, just some criteria and tailor them together and user testing.
So in your knowledge, is there any rules? Maybe there's not.
There's not. And I do agree that the framework is dynamically changing through times, and each person has their own research method. And I do think as a PhD, right, you're just be confident. I think you're doing great.
Okay.
So somebody who doesn't make but writes a lot about making, I think the Chapman and Sawchuk reference is a really useful way of framing research creation. Because I think it talks about the duration of the different types of research that can be generated through the act of making, right? So research through creation, creation as research, right? There's different modalities across the research creation practices. For me, as a European, it was very interesting to realize the different terminologies. So in Europe, it's practice-based research. In North America, it's sort of typified as sort of like research creation. But for me, I always start with my students going back to that Chapman and Sawchuk typology of research creation. They offer four different approaches or ways of framing, which tend to be durational for me. So they tend to talk about, you know, what stage in your process are you generating the knowledge, and how is that knowledge informing your ongoing creation?
But I can share a link to the paper.
Thank you so much.
We can talk for like ever about research creation. I'm not going to say anything because I have my own frame. Okay, so anybody else who wants to say anything? Because I have a few comments, and I'm wondering if you guys can address it. But first, Marko, because first the guest, and then at the end the host.
Hi, yeah. So this is a funny one for me because I think that coming from a creative practice, like for context, I think prior to the pandemic, I was very much involved in the Toronto music scene. So most of my background was very much in kind of creative arts that didn't necessarily require the same sort of academic justification. And I feel like, in my opinion, I think that what I've been trying to navigate myself is just kind of like picking the framework that works for you, rather than looking for the kind of universal, just finding one that really, really supports your particular practice and your particular project. For me, I think that kind of comes down to using my artworks as a form of communication, because I find that when it comes to academic writing, that's the part that takes me forever, really, really kind of trying to enunciate using my words is the difficult thing, and being able to kind of convert those ideas into an artwork that kind of still communicates them, but on maybe different levels that are maybe more somatic or just something less heady. I find that really useful. And I think there's a lot of different ways to orient. So I think my work is, generally speaking, I kind of like try to organize my practice in a way that I'm trying to communicate to maybe people who aren't in academia. Whereas if you were looking to address people who are kind of researchers that are working in adjacent fields or in your fields, that's also something to consider. So I think that's where, you know, it is kind of just a matter of like finding the right coat for the weather, you know, I would say, if that makes sense.
I also think there is a process of synthesis happening where you kind of look at different fields, different methodologies that sort of resonate with your work. And sometimes you find something really similar or awfully kind of same. And those findings are so beautiful because it kind of allows you to really deep dive into what is different, and there are always going to be differences. I don't think that there's no possibility to create same kind of ideas, or they could sort of overlap or blend, but I feel like it's kind of the journey, and also synthesizing your own unique approach through a prism of many others. So it's kind of like very collaborative, but also very self-reflective. And I kind of agree with Marko about this framework, is that I see research creation as creating something, a field of your own where you can explore and navigate, but also then referencing and connecting with the others as well. Because what's beautiful within academic community is that we hone our, teachers, our inspirators. So it's kind of like you are not on your own. So you are really like growing on the backs of everybody else. So I kind of think that's kind of the beautiful journey that we can travel and also do weird and cool things at the same time. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I have a follow-up here. So in all of your work, like I heard keywords such as co-creation, dialogue, communication, collaboration, but also stuff like anti-colonial, what was the your definition? I don't know. The inadvertent capitalist, reluctant capitalist, and there was also another one. Oh, and non-anthropocentric. So all of these words, all these keywords, they don't seem to be very connected, but I actually can see a connection between them, and I would like to and I think it all goes back to the role of the artist and the role of the artist as researcher and their responsibility towards something that is not just themselves. So I would like you guys to tell me a little bit about what is your relation with the idea of community? What is your relation with the human and also the non-human, but also the infrastructures and all the supports that you are using throughout your journey? Sorry, a big question. Just anybody wants to go?
So my presentation is usually 15 minutes. So I always, acknowledge the people that work with me, but I didn't get the chance today. So I really want to cross this message through, because everything I show you today is through collaboration with the artists, designers, and also people in different fields of in educational research. So I think everything I made is community-based, research, and it's action research, and also it's inherently, co-creation, and also it never ends, right? So, and also I, after 7 years of development, then I decided and also when I'm using Gen AI, I'm thinking about the ownership and the responsibility that when we use that kind of work, and in educational field, it's kind of tolerated, to share movie without having the copyright and the licensing, and also using AI. So we're trying to make what we call open educational resource. Everything is under CC BY, and also I'm donating this whole project to an NGO that we formed, right? So to host a different workshop and keep this research going, and also share the data that with people who work with us, and not to research on the student, but to publish with the student. I think that forms of sense of the community, but still there are a lot of rules that it doesn't exist in pre-AI area. So we want to do research on how do we co-own this practice, and what is the ethical and the best practice, in this area with the different age groups and all that. So that's remain unanswered. So yeah. Anyone else?
No. I'm not even presenting. No, but maybe I have a follow-up comment / question to Roberta, because I was thinking, yes, but it's not even the question is not for you, but it's the same kind of question about collaboration, dialogue, and I was just wondering, listening to everyone, thinking about this question of distributed agency between humans, more than humans, technology, publics, and so on. Can we really put the question of dialogue and co-creation and collaboration on the same ground when we talk about say environments or technologies or publics? I'm just thinking, because to me, and I was thinking about Dave's presentation, and maybe Maria also, how do we navigate the question of collaboration with the non-human? Because objectively, they don't really care about making art, So is it what kind of nuance can we bring to those words that, as Roberta said, it's all about putting the artist in relation with its environment and within
very plural ecologies, but can it really be collaboration, or it's more about activation, about augmentation? I'm just curious about all the nuances between those words and how we can use them and what are the limits of those words. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I think,
just adding to that thought process, I always think of dialogical and sort of potentially that being a nice way of sort of describing those types of collaborations, for lack of a better word, because I think of dialogical relationships between, say, the flower and the bee. You know, they're existing for their own purposes, doing what they need to do, but they sort of enter into a dialogue that's non-linguistic. And so I guess I think of it in those terms. But yeah, I just wanted to add that as well. Did you want to?
Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of speak to that a little bit. I think for me, a big part of it that I'm actually realizing, I'm like, oh, maybe I should include this in future versions of this presentation is, I don't know, I think a big part of my work comes from the fact that for me personally, when I was a child, I was very much like an indoor kid. Like I was like video games, loved that, didn't really know how to experience nature, things like that. And it wasn't until I was kind of in my early 20s that I kind of started going camping with my current partner. And I experienced what's known as the wilderness effect for the first time, which was, you know, you camp for a couple of nights and by the third day you feel a change in the wind and you know it's going to rain in half an hour. And suddenly your whole body is kind of like activated in this way that you didn't know was possible. And you have this attunement and this sort of relationship to the space around you that is oftentimes kind of gated out just because of the way that we've trained our brains to work in most contemporary contexts. So I think for me, the question of kind of dialogue or collaboration really comes to this feeling of like, how am I approaching the situation? I think it's so easy to look at, relationships between more than human species, let alone like humans and more than humans. And very, very quickly kind of fall into the pattern of like analysis of utilitarianism of like, how is this one species benefiting this other? And like, what's the transaction here? And kind of trying to look at it from, again, that non-quantifiable way of, I don't know, like just coexistence and I don't know, things like love and care, things that are really, really avoidant of easy quantification, is I think one way of kind of at least priming one's brain towards that approach and how to work with it. In the end, like I'm fully aware if I were ever doing land-based art, I could very easily be kind of pushed on and asked like, how is this not still a type of exploitation or extraction, which I think David is thinking about a lot in the context of the lakes. So it's definitely not an easy thing to navigate, but I do think that kind of trying to orient your approach in that way that is very relational, just to start as like a baseline and kind of trying to get out of the common thinking that we're so used to, the analytical thinking is kind of a good first step, potentially.
I need to find the name because I'm really bad with name. And
when I find the reference back I will send to Roberta is when you were talking about your interview with band members, there's an anthropologist, and I forget the name, who developed a guide for interviewing plants. So you can interview your fellow non-human band member if you want. So I'll share with Roberta. I was really struck with that picture of the plant in the band.
For me, I started out talking about my project as an imaginary or potential future or really just a giant what if question. And I think there's a lot of power in asking those questions. And I think it's, artists are often the people that are asking those questions. And so, once you present that what if and you go down the road of trying to answer it, it ushers in all kinds of nuance and all kinds of insights that you wouldn't get to if you didn't pose that question. I even think of an example from economics like post-growth. There's a movement out of the UK that is kind of tearing down this idea that unlimited growth is possible when we know that the world is finite in its resources. So putting out this idea that growth is over, invites economists to enter into a new kind of dialogue about what can be more sustainable. How can we use parts of that old system that still work, but how can it serve more people? So I think, you know, that's just like a concrete example of a what if, and, you know, mine, you know, puts me in the position of asking ethical questions and spiritual questions, and but I think that road gets you to some really interesting places. But I will say that there are some scientists that are working with mycelium who are indicating that there's a vocabulary there. There's 30 to 40 phrases that they're encountering. So while I'm calling it a what if or an imaginary, there is some scientific evidence that supports communication may be possible.
Thank you, everyone, for your presentations. It was really interesting to look at the sort of spectrum of ideas. I think I want to respond to this idea of working with more than humans, and also I think it also allows you to shift to a mindset of sensing and listening rather than analyzing. So that is always important. And also, I think artists help bring that to focus. That is also a job. But sensing, listening, shifting time. I think this idea that I think economists think about like growth in that sense, and what it would mean to shift the idea of time beyond humans to tree time or algae time or mycelium time. So these are, when we are thinking about loss of ecology, it's not for us. It includes all of that more than human, and it's important right now, especially to shift that perspective. And all these different projects that you're bringing to the table, they do that. Thinking of bogs as alive systems, rivers as alive systems. These are all questions that are important as we face multiple climate crises. And I totally agree that there are phrases that non-humans have or presence, and you just have to listen. I think in my personal experience working with algae, I definitely 100% feel that they're communicating with me. When they're not home, like if they've installed them in an exhibit, I feel different. I'm like, where are my algae? What are they doing? I'm missing them. It's also like personal and like very much an embodied kind of knowledge. Thank you. I'm Deepika, by the way.
Okay, respond. I think that Kavi has it.
Okay. Just a small little short story about the band. We rehearsed twice and performed once, and when we were getting ready to perform at TMU, the plant was in the performance space, but the human musicians were kind of hiding out, waiting for the audience to come and assemble. And we sort of all collectively kind of looked at each other and felt like someone was missing. Like it was a real feeling like the whole band wasn't there.
It was.
So I'm going to take it for 1 second. The really interesting thing that I found is that the band members said every time the plant is different, every time it's making different sounds, which is really interesting. And when I asked the drummer, like, who's leading this? He said, the plant. Like, we're responding to the plant. But the fact that it's so different, it sounds different if it's not been watered compared to then when it's watered. But when it was in the same garage, same people, everything, the drummer said completely different every time.
We actually posted this presentation, this performance on the SLOLab website. So if you go into projects, you can see it. They actually performed it twice, and they're very, very different performances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really taken by that.
Oh, Kavi?
I was just thinking maybe it's very uncohesive rumblings of my mind, but in terms of these extractionist practices, and I'm actually looking at this picture right here, and I'm thinking like it's this landscape of no people, no skyscrapers, no cars. Well, there's a kind of driven road indicated there. But I feel like this extractionist methods has allowed the technologies to prosper, but in return has allowed us to kind of investigate the source, like the earth, the nature, the universe, like a much larger scope. It's given us kind of this ability to fly and imagine and wonder. So in a way, it's kind of sacrifice, like there's the kind of sorrow and beauty at the same time. And I think they are all very interlinked. So it's kind of more how aware we are of that. And we are avid users of technology, but then we also cry about cut down trees. But I feel like it's almost like inevitably connected. And it's about being aware of that and acknowledgement that it's not going to bring back the tree, but it's going to sort of shape our, I guess, ethical relationship and acknowledging mistakes and, harm. I think it's really, really huge. And perhaps that can inform the future choices and actions. So I feel like we can speak about one and another in a very separate mode. I feel like everything is together, everything is interlinked, and because of one there is another. And I think we need to speak about that and be very open and honest. Yeah. I have a question for your boat. What are those writings inside of the canoe? Or there was a picture and I was trying to read it and I couldn't. So tell me, what are those writings?
Last summer, I was invited to the Lake Shift, which is a writing retreat for graduate students sponsored by Queen's University, and it takes place about an hour north of Kingston in a conservation area, and it's mostly biology students that go, but I was kind of volunteered by my program director to go, but it was a tremendous experience, and I brought my research canoe with me, and I had all of the other graduate students sign it so that they could come on my research journey. And that week I was able to take many students for their first ever canoe ride. I'd never been in a canoe, so it was very rewarding. I'm going back this year. And I love sign the canoe. I wish I brought it with me here today.
I want to go on a trip on your canoe. I haven't been canoeing in a long time, and I'm very bad at canoeing. Okay. I think that time is up because it's already 10:40. I'm really grateful for your generosity. Jane wants to say something.
Yes. Well, I also want to thank you guys all for your generosity and your time and your energy, and I think this is really great. I'm so happy to see such a turnout, and I'm motivated to do this again next year. So thank you guys all. So some people might want to continue conversing and being social, and so I thought we could maybe all go to Bar Ravel. They don't have a phone number, so I can't find out if there's room. So I say let's just go. And I wanted to give you the address. It's 505 College Street, so it's basically west. You just walk out the door and go west 1 kilometer. So it's like a 15-minute walk. And it would be lovely if you guys joined us there. It's got great architecture. It's like all wood on the interior, and they've got nice tapas. So that's all I wanted to add. I don't know, maybe you want to close it off?
Okay. Well, thanks so much for coming, and I hope that you will review the video when we put it up. And if you want to sign up for our newsletter, if you go on the ArtSciSalon.com website, actually ArtSci Salon and the AndSLOLab have ongoing collaboration. So whatever we're doing it together right now. So stay in touch. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Okay. You want to go now? I think I need to give